Yeah, today we're going to be looking at Leetcode 2194, cells in a range on an Excel sheet. This is an easy difficulty Leetcode problem, and we're told that a cell where we have row and column of an Excel sheet is represented as a string, column, and row, where column denotes the column number of the cell, and it's represented by alphabetical letters, and a row is a row number represented by an integer. And so we're given these, the cells in this format here, so not RC but column and row, so kind of like C1 would be an example. So the column is C, an alphabetical letter, and 1 is the integer which represents the row. So we're basically told that we're given a string where we have two of these cells which represents a range. So we have something like this, C1 and C2. And we want to return the list of cells such that they are in this range. So we basically want to return the Cartesian product of C1 and C2, and we want to, this should be sorted in non-decreasing order, so in ascending order basically. So we want to basically get the Cartesian product, all the sets basically within this range. And we're in this example, it tells us, and we have this little nice line here which tells us the order in which we should return the result set, K1, K2, and then go back up L1, L2. So this line denotes the order in which the cells should be returned. So how can we actually solve this problem? Well, it is an easy problem, but the logic can be a bit confusing, and the intuition behind it is understanding that for each character in Python, for example, it's mapped to a Unicode number. There's a Unicode representation, a Unicode integer. So for example, C can be mapped to 99, B can be mapped to 98. So we have a number behind each character that we have in Python. And so, how do we do this? We can use a function called ord, and the ord function will basically return us a number from a character that we pass in. So this is super handy just to know, and we're going to actually code this up now, but it will make more sense as we get coding. So the first thing we want to do is get the start column as a number. And why do we want a number? Well, a number is just easier to loop through, to iterate through. It's a lot harder to do if we're just going to be using characters. So the first thing we want to do, and it would require some mapping anyway, so this the built-in functions that Python has for converting strings to numbers is amazing for us. So the first thing we can do is actually cast this into a number. So starting column, and then I'm going to say starting row, and we basically want to convert this character, the string, into an integer, and then copy the same here. So end column, we'll pass in 3, because remember we do want to skip the fact that there is a colon, so we want to skip the colon, and then 4, and this is going to be end column and end row. So the next thing we want to do is create our result list, which is going to have all the pairs in this range, and then we can say for each character in range of start column and end column, start column and end column plus 1. Remember, we don't want to get caught out with the fact that Python is a 0 index based language. And then we want to say start row and end row. And what we can do now is simply append to our result. So we want to append. So we want to append C, but C is actually a number. So we want to cast it back into a character, into a string. So let's pass in C and pass in the row, which is also a number. So we want to convert that into a string so we can concatenate it with our character. So we're just going to pass in our row like this. So what can we do after we've got our result set? All we need to do now is just return our result set. Let's check our code actually works. And it does not. Why does it not? Because we've just not changing this to an R as opposed to a C. And we passed all 251 test cases for this problem. So guys, this is an easy problem, but it does require some intuition to understanding that we need to cast characters to numbers to solve this problem. And then it's a simple iteration over here and adding all the sets to our result list and returning that result. So in terms of time complexity, guys, it's going to be the number of rows by the number of columns, and this is going to be both for the time and for the space, because remember, we are also going to be storing all the result sets, all the result pairs, basically. So in essence, big O of R by C is just going to be big O of N for both the time and the space. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the explanation made sense, and I'll catch you in the next one.